Konnichiwa, minasan. Welcome. We're going to be continuing on with our verbs today. Going to be looking at negative verbs and the verb stem. Today's lesson is for 12日、11月、2018年. You can find this Google Doc that's on screen now in the YouTube description box below. All these changes we're going to do today depend on us knowing what iru and eru verbs are, or u verbs and ru verbs are. I'd really recommend you check out my previous videos in this series if you're not sure what this terminology is. So here are some verbs we can use today. We've got taberu, miru, hanasu, kiku, kau, matsu, and aru. Now aru is going to be a bit of an exception. This is why it's got the star on it. But otherwise, well, taberu, miru, we should be pretty clear that these are ru verbs now. And obviously all these other ones, apart from aru, are just u verbs without having to do much thinking at all. And aru, well, we see we got an a sound there, so that's also an u verb. Okay, so here's our rule. So for ru verbs, it's pretty simple. We just drop the ru and then we put nai in its place. So if we were using taberu as an example, it would be tabe nai. All right, taberu, to eat, tabe nai, won't eat or don't eat. Our next rule is kind of split up into two. We have u verbs, but then we have u verbs that actually end in u are treated differently to all the other u verbs. So for u verbs that end in u, we replace that last u with a wa, and then we attach nai. So we end up with kawanai if we were using kau, to buy, as an example. Kau, to buy, kawanai, don't buy or won't buy. Then for all other u verbs, what we have to do is kind of imagine our hiragana chart, and we go, whatever that u sound is at the end, we change it pretty much on the same row of the hiragana chart to the a vowel equivalent. So for example, if we take matsu, on that hiragana row, we have ta, chi, tsu, te, to. Okay, if we think about that. And then the a vowel equivalent of that is the first one, ta. So we put ta in the place of tsu, and then we put nai. So matsu, to wait, matanai, to not wait or won't wait. So let's take another example. Another example we could use would be kiku, okay? The a vowel equivalent of this guy is ka, so it would be kikanai, for don't listen. Finally, we have our exception verbs, which are normally just suru and kuru, but as mentioned, we have aru as well for an example, just for the negative. This is an exception. So we have suru, and that becomes shinai. Kuru, this becomes konai, and aru just becomes nai. All right, so this is kind of interesting because now we realize that nai is the opposite of aru, and this is why we've been kind of seeing it on the end of our nouns and adjectives, right? We think of gakusei, janai. For our e adjectives, oish kunai. All right, we can hear that nai on both of those things, and now this kind of makes a bit more sense here. Next thing we're going to look at is how do we make the mus form of verbs. Now, this is the polite way to use verbs, so it's really important that we learn this early on. But we're going to see that the rule we use to make the mus form, we can use for a whole bunch of other things that we'll look at in later lessons. For ru verbs, we just drop the ru. So if we had taberu, it just ends up being tabe. For u verbs, what we do is we replace that final u sound with now the i vowel equivalent. So if we had iku, to go, as an example here, we would change that ku to a ki. All right, the u goes to an i. So iki is our final result. Now for our exceptions, suru becomes just shi, and kuru becomes ki. So if we go off that list of verbs we had earlier, we'll end up with taberu becomes tabe, miru just becomes mi, hanasu becomes hanashi, kiku becomes kiki, kau becomes kai, and aru becomes ari. So like I mentioned, the mus form is just one of the many things we can do with the verb stem. So what we do, we just make the verb stem, and then we can add mus to the end, and then we've got our mus form. So we saw it was tabe before, now it's tabe mus. And it doesn't really matter if these are u verbs or ru verbs once we've done this rule. So we can just go through that list as before. So we end up with tabemas, mimas, hanashimas, and so on. Now for the polite negative form, so what's I guess we could call the masen form, instead of attaching mas to that mas stem, we instead add masen. So it would be tabemasen, mimasen, hanashimasen, kikimasen, and so on. Alright, that wraps it up for today's video. We're going to be continuing on with other verb conjugations like we've looked at today in the next one. Stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.